this is the second video in the series. My name is Oliver Calmadoe, Principal of the International Macrobiotics School. And in this video I want to talk a little about the power of food. It's been recognized for thousands of years that food is a very powerful healer, and is very powerful in keeping ourselves well. If we look around the world, ancient systems like ancient Greek medicine, Egyptian medicine, really understood that food was an essential part of health, and if people became ill, a main approach was to fast. If we look around the world, Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, many parts of the world have an evolved system of medicine, understanding how food can both create illness if we're eating unhealthy foods or there's an unhealthy balance in our food, or can create wellness, and also can be very powerful in healing illness. Strangely, in recent times in the West, we lost this understanding up until maybe just the last 20 or 30 years. So 40 years ago, when I first got into studying macrobiotics and the more alternative approaches to health, it was thought that food had nothing to do with health. Whatever health problem you had, you could just eat whatever you like. That food was not a part of causing illness or a part of healing illness. Then in the late or in the 1980s, some studies started showing that eating a diet rich in animal fats was the primary cause of coronary heart disease, the build-up of fats in the heart, and coronary heart disease, and often leading to strokes as well, being the biggest cause of illness and dying in Western culture. This was a big revelation. Then it really took into the 1990s and the 2000s to start realizing that cancer, which has greatly increased over the last 100 years, also is primarily a diet and lifestyle caused illness. First of all, looking at lung cancer, then liver cancer, large intestine cancer, strong correlation between large intestinal colon cancer, colorectal cancer, and the amount of meat that people eat. Strong correlation between breast cancer and the amount of animal fats that women eat, for example. So now and then more and more cancers, it's being understood that certain dietary factors can really promote cancers. Now it's beginning to be realized that food also has a big effect on other health problems. Diabetes. Diabetes was thought to be just something that happened to people. Now it's being recognized as being primarily diet and lifestyle caused. Little frustrating at times, I have to admit, because back in the 1980s, macrobiotics, which was just so far ahead of its time, was saying that Michio Kushi, the leading teacher of macrobiotics, wrote this book in the 1980s, The Cancer Prevention Diet. He was already looking at how different foods contribute to different kinds of cancer, and how we can use food to prevent cancer, and in some cases to also help with the healing of cancer. Same with diabetes. Back in the 1980s, we understood how food was a primary cause, and also could be used to help heal some cases of type 2 diabetes. Amazing that this has now come into the mainstream just in the last few years, and even doctors and Western medicine is recognizing that diabetes, particularly when people first develop type 2 diabetes, it's very often possible to reverse the condition. When it's much more, when people have had advanced, it may be possible to improve it a lot, but not necessary to heal it. So it's really coming to the fore now that food is really probably the biggest thing that determines whether we're healthy or whether we become sick. It's getting very confusing these days. When I started on this journey in the 1980s, there was the kind of standard British modern diet with a lot of meat, dairy, sugar, a lot of processed foods, and very little whole foods. And so it was very easy to see what needed to happen, coming onto a more balanced plant-based diet. Now, so many different theories, and it's getting very confusing. Should we be eating carbohydrates? Should we not be eating carbohydrates? Most people think it's great to eat whole grains, and this is what we've been eating for thousands of years, and a lot of people getting a lot of good health from eating whole grains. But there's a movement that carbohydrates are bad for us. So it's getting very confusing. And actually I find that the principle of macrobiotics, which are really rooted in old traditions, very, very useful at this time for cutting through, you could say, a lot of the crap and a lot of the ideas which maybe hold some truth, but people think that they apply to everybody all the time. Really what we need is a flexible approach to understanding the relationship between food and health. So, thank goodness there is a general consensus. And one way we could understand this is with what is promoted now by the National Health Service in the UK, which advises that we should all be eating roughly 1/3 complex carbohydrate from whole grains and products, 1/3 vegetables and fruit. Then we need some foods which are higher in protein, which traditionally have been thought of as being meat, meat being concentrated proteins being the best source of protein. The trouble is with meat is that it comes with a lot of fat, so it's not the best source of protein and not to be eating a lot of. So here they're saying eat more beans and pulses, 2 portions of sustainable fish a week, and eat less meat, and especially processed meats, which have been shown to contain a lot of chemicals which promote cancer. So we need a bit from this section, and then this section, which was the dairy section just 5 years ago. This was what they were advising, and it was thought that dairy was essential for health, to give us calcium and etc. Now it's been acknowledged that dairy food is not essential for health. Actually, the majority of the world's population do not eat dairy foods on a regular basis and often experience very good health and don't suffer from calcium deficiency or more osteoporosis. So this has now been acknowledged in the latest NHS guidelines. So it has this little section for dairy or alternatives such as plant milks, soy creams, oat creams, etc. And then a small section for oils. High sugar foods, high salt foods, etc. are now outside of what is considered to be a healthy diet. The great thing about Macrobiotics is that we make some really beautiful desserts, so we can have our cake and eat it, so to speak. We can enjoy really a wide variety of foods, including some really nice desserts, which are healthy for us and are not going to be detrimental to our health. So this plan is reflected in the World Health Organization recommendations, the Heart Foundation's, that you may have seen the China study, very comprehensive study of diet by an American nutritionalist, same conclusions. Another very interesting book, The Blue Zone Solution. This guy, Dan Buchner, went around the world, looked at 5 places where people live the longest to see what lifestyle, social structure and food what people were doing in these 5 places. And guess what? They were eating a plant-based diet. Pretty similar to that. A lot of complex carbohydrates, vegetables, plant proteins, generally a small amount of some kind of animal food, but not very much. Some sweetness, etc. So that is the general consensus. This way of eating, is also being realised that it'd be really a really good idea for us nationally and internationally to move to a more plant-based way of eating because of the effects on our environment. So we're in the middle of COP26 right now, and one of the things they're discussing is that one of the most warming chemicals going into the atmosphere is methane. So we know a lot about carbon dioxide, which comes from cars and and other sources from burning fossil fuels for energy. But another big source is methane, and the main source of methane are certain agricultural practices, use of fertilizers, and especially raising animals, because animals, ruminants, give off a lot of methane when they're breaking down plant matter, which is very difficult to break down. With the help of bacteria and microorganisms in their gut, they produce a lot of methane. So the more animals we have, the more methane we produce, and that's a major contributor. Maybe as much as 20% of global warming is caused by methane production. So going on to plant-based diet also will really help slow down global warming. So a lot of different ways of understanding the effect of food on health. What I want to explain to you very briefly is a particular approach used in macrobiotics, which is quite easy to understand, very easy to apply ourselves, and it's very, very easy to quickly see what beneficial changes to make to our diet. So it's using the Oriental principles of yin or yang, which you may or may not be familiar with. So, but yang foods we can define as much more solid, heavy foods. When we eat them, we can really feel them heavy in our stomach, often much richer in nutrients, higher in protein and fat, and often salt. These kind of heavy foods, often they're perceived like meat, eggs, chicken, cheese, and very salty foods, are often perceived as foods which give our body strength, which give us energy. To a milder extent, fish, shellfish, salty seasonings like soy sauce, herb salt, miso, an oriental soup seasoner, also give us, bring this energy into the body, give us more heat and energy. And then in the middle of this range are the more whole plant foods, all the different parts of plants. Traditionally, we eat a lot of grains because they're very nutritious, contain a lot of carbohydrate, vitamins, minerals, etc. And we can grow a lot of grain on a particular area of land. Beans, excellent source of plant protein that doesn't come with all the fats that the meat, eggs, chicken, cheese, etc. come with. Vegetables, fruits, seeds, nuts, also sea vegetables, seaweeds, that means which are eaten in many parts of the world. Free food, just growing on the shore. These foods have a more kind of balanced effect on the body. Some of them, like grains, beans, root vegetables, have a more warming, energizing, grounding effect. We could say more yang effect on the body. Others have a lighter, more opening, more cooling effect. We'd say more yin effect. When we eat fruit, that has a lighter effect on the body. When the weather's hot, we want to eat more fruits in the summer to cool us down. Green vegetables, salads, these foods have a more lighter, cooling, opening effect. And then if we go more on the yin side, more yin foods are bringing our energy more up and outwards. They can have a more relaxing effect on us, but if we overconsume them, they can have a weakening effect on the body. In the long term, they have a cooling effect on the body. The yang foods have a more warming effect, the more yin foods have a more cooling effect, although they may create quick heat, which then turns to cold. So slightly more yin are various extracts from plants, such as oils, vegetable juices, fruit juices, herbs, also tropical fruits and vegetables, oranges, bananas, etc. And also the nightshade vegetables, potatoes, tomatoes, aubergines. They have a more opening, relaxing effect on the body. And also milks, whether that's cow's milk, plant milks. Then foods which have a much stronger yin effect on the body, a lot of which feel stimulating to start off with because they give quick energy. Sugar, I put honey down here because it's 85% glucose, has quite a similar effect. Spices, anything with caffeine in, coffee, black tea. Alcohol, more up this end. Recreational drugs, having a very strong effect on the body, really up this end, marijuana, etc. We can understand a lot of things through, with this chart. For example, if we're feeling like we want to have more energy, more heat in the body, often we will go for more salty foods, maybe some fish, shellfish, grain dishes, salty soups, maybe some eggs, meat, chicken, etc. Whereas if we're wanting to relax, what do we go for then? We tend to go for something sweet, something sugary, maybe for some caffeine, a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, a little alcohol, or some people may go for recreational drugs, have a smoke, etc. What we can also see is that if we're eating from these, the modern Western diet up until fairly recent times has been composed mostly of these strong yang foods and a lot of these strong yin foods, and not very much of the whole foods in the center. These are the whole foods, which is basically we've eaten whole foods for thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. This is what we've evolved to eat, is whole foods. One of the disasters in nutrition really has been processed foods in the last 50 years. One thing we can see is that when we eat these more yang foods, salty foods, for example, we're thirsty, we then want some alcohol, some fruit juices, something on the inside. Same, a lot of people don't realize, but if you eat a significant amount of meat, eggs, chicken, cheese, then the body, that creates more heat in the body, more tension in the body, often too much. And then what do we want? Then we want to go here. Then we want a cup of tea, then we want some biscuits, then we want some cake, we want something sweet, or we want to have a glass of wine or some alcohol to go with the meal. And then we get into bouncing between the two. We have these strong yang foods creating a lot of heat and tension, and then we want these relaxing foods, high sugar foods, caffeine, etc. And we're bouncing between the two. And this, both of these categories in the long term have a really detrimental effect on our health. But when we eat one, we crave the other, and then we bounce between the two. So until fairly recent times, a lot of interest now in plant-based eating and vegan eating, but still probably the diet that most people are eating. If we drew on a graph, people are eating a lot of these yang foods, not much of the whole foods, and a lot of the yin foods. And this is the primary cause of the degenerative illness and many health problems which we're suffering in modern society. So the traditional diet plan is the opposite. Not much of the strong yang, mostly the central foods, and not much of the strong yin. So mostly eating grains, beans, veg, fruit, seeds, nuts, sea vegetables. Maybe a little bit of salt. A little bit of salt can be fine for health for most people. Maybe in the form of sea salt, much better than highly processed salt. Himalayan salt, miso, shoyu, herb salt, etc. And maybe a little animal food. And generally a bit on this side, some oils, some juices, some herbs, etc. And then really very little in the first category, meat, eggs, cheese, etc. And really very little in the sugar, alcohol, caffeine side of things. And this creates much better health. Very interesting that in this book, the Blue Zone Solution, generally people in these 5 areas of the world where people live longest were eating a small amount of either of animal food, fish, shellfish, meat, eggs, etc. But the amount was really small. He says about the size of a pack of cards a week. not very much by Western standards, where many people are eating meat, eggs, cheese, chicken, breakfast, lunch, supper, snacks, etc., which just completely overloads the body with fats. So the primary idea, the primary guide in macrobiotics is to reduce these outside two categories, a little bit of the next two, and primarily we're eating these central foods. And this is what macrobiotics have been saying for 50, 60 years or so. And hey presto, Western medicine is catching up. So this is almost come to represent this. So we've got the whole grains, the complex carbohydrates, the vegetables, the beans, maybe some plant milks, some oil. So really the consensus is to bring our food into eating more whole foods. Good for our health, good for global warming, good for growing the most food in the world. Really, if we're eating a more plant-based, feeding the world is not a problem right now. This is also, this diet not only helps, create good health, gives us lots of energy, but also we can be relaxed. It is also a really good guide for healing various health problems. If we eat in excess of these problems, then what tends to happen in the body is that we get a build-up, first of all, of tension and heat, and then fats, maybe in the heart, maybe in the liver, maybe gallstones, maybe ovarian cysts, maybe breast cysts, maybe fibroids, maybe an enlarged prostate. These foods, they just contain too much fat and often too much protein, and then we get a build-up in the body, causing heart problems, female reproductive problems, prostate problems, breast problems, liver problems, gallstone problems, etc., etc. So how do we help those problems? Well, number one, eat a central diet, especially avoiding these strong yang foods, and a little bit more emphasis on the more yin foods to help the body cleanse itself of this excess that's built up, to bring us back into good health. I don't know whether I can find it really quickly. There's just an amazing diagram in this China study book. So this is one of the coronary arteries of a doctor, which you can see has really become quite blocked. It was like 70-80% blocked, so he's heading for a heart attack. Standard Western procedure, maybe put a stent in, or maybe do a heart bypass operation. He went on a plant-based, near-vegan diet, and 18 months later, this is the same artery in his heart, and it's completely cleared. So this, we can clear these deep fats in the body. It means eating a more cleansing diet for quite a while. But amazing the power of food plus exercise and a healthy lifestyle in helping clear the body of some of these problems. If we've eaten a lot of these more yin foods, they tend to take energy out of the body. So at first this can feel very stimulating. If we drink some caffeine, a little bit of alcohol, some sugar, some chocolate, has a more stimulating effect. It gives us an energy surge. But what it's also doing is depleting the body. So if you've drunk too much alcohol, how do you feel the next day? You feel lacking in energy, you feel depressed. Too much caffeine, you may experience the same. Sugar, you may experience the same. You get a high and then you get a low. And then, of course, you may then think, well, okay, well, then I need some more sugar, or you're attracted to more sugar to give you another boost. So too many of these foods can create problems of depletion. We see a lot of chronic fatigue. Also, it destroys or lessens the integrity of the body, the defense of the body. So a lot of these foods creates more allergies, food allergies and airborne allergies, because the body isn't able to hold these substances outside of the body. They get into the body, and then the body sets up an allergic reaction. So allergies, including hay fever. I've seen many people heal themselves of hay fever over the years. This is every illness is happening for definite reasons. Western medicine is now kind of catching up with how diet and lifestyle is the primary cause of illness, and also our emotions, I must add. But this has been known, this is part of Oriental medicine, it's part of the macrobiotic understanding for ages. So why are so many people have allergies now? Because of consuming too many of these yin foods, too many processed foods, not enough balanced, strengthening whole foods in the diet. Too many yin foods also causing asthma, digestive problems. If we become depleted, then also brain fog, loss of memory, loss of concentration, deep fatigue, chronic fatigue, etc. So if if someone is suffering these kind of problems, then this is a real no-no list. Really need to avoid these. Not much of these, lots of these central foods, and just tending the diet a little bit more to the yang side. And then gradually these yin foods will come out of the body, will discharge them from the body, and the body will become stronger, will fill up with energy again, become stronger, develop stronger integrity. So I primarily talked about food and its relation to physical health, really big effect on our emotional health and our thinking as well. Eating a lot of these foods, our thinking often becomes, the body becomes more rigid, often our thinking becomes more rigid, often we become emotionally more rigid. We can think that we're always right, find it difficult to listen to other people's views, be very pushy, driven, etc. If we've eaten a lot of these foods and we've become depleted, then on the other hand we may feel much more underconfident, we lack energy, we lack drive, we lack the ability to stand up for ourselves, we become ungrounded. These people can often do very well in the material world, these people can struggle to be in the world, feel easily overwhelmed. So again, these emotional states, when we eat a more balanced diet and live a more balanced lifestyle as well, it helps bring us into the middle. This is not going to heal all of our emotions. We definitely need to do emotional healing work as well. But this, our body and our food really creates a good foundation for emotional health. This is the movement that is happening in modern society, is back to a plant-based diet. I could go into far more detail. Oriental Macrobiotic Medicine has a really detailed understanding of the connection between particular foods, different organs, different illnesses, and how to heal different health problems. If you want to kind of come and study in more depth, if this kind of approach interests you, it'd be great to come and study in more depth. The next video, I'm going to be looking at how do we assess our health, how do we know if we're healthy or not. Often illness seems to strike us out of the blue. We suddenly discover we've got diabetes or arthritis or skin problems, heart problems, etc. And why has that happened? Again, modern Western science has gone in one direction with blood tests and x-rays and understanding our health in one way. There are other ways that we can learn to use ourselves to look after our health and make adjustments when we're becoming imbalanced, which is just an amazing way of preventing ourselves developing most health problems. So we're all for prevention. So again, I encourage you to take action, to study this. Much better to prevent health problems than wait until you're ill and then try and heal them. Part of the purpose of really studying food and other ways of promoting health is so that we can promote our health and to prevent ourselves from getting serious and chronic health problems. It's in Western medicine, it's a bit of a mystery as to why people develop certain illnesses. So an example is in this present situation with COVID, which Western medicine has brought a lot of really good understanding and a lot of help. But a mystery has been, why is it that some people that don't have any illnesses or symptoms develop really serious COVID symptoms, are very seriously affected by it and maybe die from it, whereas other people get no symptoms at all? Obviously, this is because people have different levels of health. But this is not an area that's really been studied greatly so far by Western medicine. This is something that has been studied a lot in Oriental medicine. And in the next video, I'm going to look at Oriental diagnosis, which has a whole bunch of different methods where we can assess our internal health and have a really quite good idea of what is happening with our health. And we can use that information to promote ourselves, to increase our health, create internal balance, and in doing that, every step we take in improving our health, we're reducing our chances of developing more serious or life-threatening illnesses. Something which I've seen a lot over the decades that I've been seeing clients is that sometimes people get into macrobiotics, really attracted to the ideas, really want to look after their health better, and then for various, really feel the improvements, develop some trust in it, in this approach, and then for various reasons drift off, busy lives, etc. And then, years later, develop some kind of serious health problem, and then they come back to me because they have some faith in macrobiotics as being effective healing, and then really want to use macrobiotics to then heal, their health condition. It kind of saddens me because really it is so much easier to prevent ourselves getting serious health problems than it is to wait until we have them. Whether it's heart problems, cancer, reproductive system problems, enlarged prostates, fibroids, ovarian cysts, infertility, etc., etc. So much easier to prevent these problems than it is to heal them once they've happened. So really want to encourage you to, in your studies of health, and to listen to my next video where I'm going to be talking about some simple methods of assessing your own health.